Good evening, everyone. I am excited tonight for us to uh, have this powerful conversation with Finally I Choose Me podcast, which is the podcast for authenticity and purpose. I am excited for our guest this evening. This is a very sensitive topic, but I am excited to have Pastor Bob Davis, Robert Davis Jr. from Christ Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church in Saginaw. He agreed. I put the call out for any pastor to join me, but he was the one that said yes. And so I'm just going to allow him and welcome him to this conversation, which is a conversation that many don't want to have, don't want to face. But we are talking about mental illness in the Black church. Of course, mental illness goes across all nationalities and ethnicities. But for tonight, we're dealing with the Black church. So welcome, Pastor Bob Davis.
Thank you, Dr. C, for having me. I'm excited to be with you. It's just good for us to be here. If I was at church, I would say I'm hippopotamus happy and peacock proud. But since I'm at the crib and I'm talking to you, I'm just gonna say what up with it,
We just gonna say what up like we do.
like we do.
So just for our disclaimer, like I mentioned, Finally I Choose Me is about being who you are. And so we're just gonna kick it the way that we normally do.
Sure.
And so this topic is a topic that I have really been talking about, I would say, for the last 25 years.
hmm
Mental health in the Black community. Mental illness, as we know, is now becoming a conversation. People are now recognizing that therapy is different than casting out demons.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
the Black community and the stigma of mental health and mental illness, we have been advocating against it by educating, by letting people understand what mental illness is. And I'll just briefly give just a brief, simple definition. Mental illness is when your mental, your emotional, and your behavior state uh, over a period of time is not functioning well.
Mm, mm.
Meaning,
That's good.
hey, I can't sleep. I feel hopeless. I'm having crying spells. I don't feel well. I'm isolating. I don't eat well. I can't, or I'm angry and I don't understand why. There is a multitude of symptoms, but we have what we call mild symptoms. We have symptoms that are moderate, and we have symptoms that's chronic. Mental illness is just not always somebody running across the freeway. Mental
hmm
illness is something that shows up every day among us. But for the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about it in the church. So, Pastor,
Talk to me.
tell me, first of all, what statistics say is that pastors, leaders, elders, ministers are suffering with depression at alarming rates, just as the congregation. So, what should we begin to do, or what have you witnessed as a pastor as it comes to serving and leading people? What have you seen over the last, I would say, since COVID?
Well, I'll tell you this, Doctor, that it's it's better that we're talking about it now because in the past, when we grew up in church, we didn't talk about it.
Right.
And mental illness in the Black church is often under-addressed, stigmatized, or overly spiritualized. Yet it's deeply real and increasingly relevant. The problem that we're facing is that it's not only in the pews, it's in the pulpit. And when it's in the pulpit and it's in the pews and we having good church, but ain't nobody doing nothing about the problem. Only thing we doing is we are causing ourselves to have good church, but we ain't dealing with what's really going on Monday through Saturday. And the real fight is I got God, but I got something going on in my head that I can't figure out. And so what I share with our church is, listen, there's nothing wrong with having Jesus and a therapist.
Yes.
If you own medication, take it.
Take
That's
it.
what it's there for. Um, Anxiety, depression, it's all relevant and it's all there. Uh, when we grew up in church, the saints of old didn't have education. They didn't know a lot of stuff, but they said stuff like, he's a heart fixer. He's a mind regulator. Now, I didn't know what that meant then,
Right.
but because they said it so much, I believed it. And when I came to a place where I understood I needed him to regulate my mind, oh, it made sense. He is a
Yes.
mind regulator. So I think since COVID, because I remember calling you during COVID, my son fell into a depression, and
Mm-hmm.
there was only so much that I could do. So I had to get some professional help. But I even brought you in for the church
Mm-hmm. I
because
remember.
it was such a shock to our system to be in a situation that we've never seen before. And so we're still trying to recover from that. I know I am. So it's real.
It's real, and I think what happened during the pandemic, and even though that was 2020, I think prior to, uh, we may have been experiencing some things, but because we go to church, because we praise God, because we worship Him, there's a belief that that's enough. Now, I'm not minimizing those
Mm-mm.
practices. We need our spiritual
Sure.
practices, but I remember years ago witnessing a good Sunday, a good church Sunday,
Hmm.
and being called by my pastor the next day to see one of the members, and the member was suicidal. Now, what I witnessed that Sunday was a spiritual high, running. You know how we do, we Black people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We have
And so
church.
my prayer was, God, can you reveal to me how we can have good church on Sunday and be suicidal Monday?
Hmm.
And so what I've learned in my practice is that some of us, we experience an emotional release,
Mm.
but that
That's
doesn't mean your mind is fixed. We know them to be a mind regulator, but sometimes it's just in that moment.
it's in that moment. It's
It's
in
in
that
that
moment.
moment. How do I sustain my cognitive abilities to where I am living a stable life?
Sure. And Chris, I think one of the challenges that we face is that people won't get the help they need so that they can cope, so they can have hope, so they can have a different way of looking at what it is they're facing. And all of us need to do that. I did something, I told you this, and I'm very open about it. 2 years ago, I went and sat down with a therapist. There was nothing wrong. I just wanted to do some preventive work. And 2 years into it, everything went wrong. I mean, everything went wrong. And I thank God that I was already in the mindset to do that so that it helped me. Still go, because when you're juggling a lot and you're trying to get through the day, you get hit. And if you're
Mhm.
not prepared, you will be messed up. I'm gonna bring it one closer home to you. Several years ago, I was getting ready to preach. I'm talking about my service has just started. It's preach time in a minute. And I get a call from a family member who was in the process of committing suicide.
Whoa.
I'm over 100 miles away. Family is in Detroit. They called me. So I'm in a, do, it's too late to get a preacher. Do I go out there and tell the church, listen, I got emergency. I got to go home. Y'all figure it out. But it was my wife's wisdom that said, no, go ahead and preach. I'm going to go home, get you a bag. When it's over, then you go. But we're dealing with stuff that people are, they know God, they know He's a healer, but they still struggling with LIFE every day.
every day. And here's the thing I want to go back to on what you said was nothing was wrong. What I
Hmm.
want our listeners to know is nothing has to be wrong
Yeah.
to go get therapy. And secondly, anything that has occurred in our story, in our life story that leads us there, it doesn't mean something
Hmm.
is wrong.
It doesn't mean it.
What it means is I am experiencing some residual effects of something that I have not dealt with, because a lot of times mental illness is triggered by an inability to cope. And so what we find when COVID hit is all of this stuff that I've never dealt with, probably thought about.
Uh-huh.
Yet
Uh-huh.
now we're in a global pandemic, and we don't know if we're going to live or die
I have no
from
idea.
1 minute to the next.
No.
So my anxiety is high, and my life goes before my eyes, and everything that I didn't deal with comes to surface.
During that time, statistics show in my area that domestic violence was at an all-time high.
Everything.
You know why? Because for the first time, people had to be with their person that they live with,
We
and you
had to.
couldn't go nowhere. I remember being so frustrated one day. I just got in the car and just drove up the road back and forth, because I got tired of being in the house. And when you are forced to sit down, when some of us should just sit down on our own, he made us sit down so that we could start really reflecting. And I'm going to tell you something, reflection can cause trauma, because
Yeah.
now you're thinking about everything. Childhood, like you said, your life is flashing before you. Um, Chris, we're still trying to recover from that. We
And
lost a lot of space in that.
we lost a lot of space. We lost a lot of people. I received more calls from churches to have this conversation. And see, here's my struggle. We still in a crisis.
Yes, that's good.
We're
That's good.
still in a crisis.
Yes,
You know, when you look at society and you look at funding sources and resources, they're very limited.
it's worse now.
And
It's worse
so
now.
if we do not begin to become educated and put things in place for our people in the church,
Yeah.
who will?
And yet, Chris, when we think about it too, yet many in the Black church have been taught to pray it away, or just have faith that leads to sometimes shame and silence.
Hmm.
But it's one thing to pray about it. It's another thing to have therapy. And it's not either pray or therapy. It's both. You need Jesus who heals through the altar, but you also need a counselor's office. You
And
need the
it's
altar and the counselor's office.
but I think too another thing in church when you sometimes people will say, are you a Christian? Well, we need therapists who are not just Christians, but
That's
can
good.
help a person deal with their spiritual conflict as it relates to their faith, or as it
Mm,
relates to, I don't know if I still believe based upon what life has come. I
that's so
don't
good.
know if I still believe God is who he is. We'll say it,
Sure.
but subconsciously, after I done stood up and confessed, I have subconsciously doubted what I just said
Yeah.
because of what I'm going through.
I
And
like
so
that.
talking is therapeutic. And then we have this stigma, we have trust issues in our churches. Um, the church should be our refuge, but we all have our personal stories and testimonies that we don't want anyone to know about.
Yeah. Don't know
And
about in my
so we
business.
suffer in silence. I
Tell
know
me
how to
this.
do church. I know how to come to church. I know how to serve. I know how to recite the scriptures. I know how to make it look good. But how can I really be honest about the fact that when I'm in silence alone, I'm sad, I'm unhappy, and I'm afraid because my mind, it was a song back in the 90s, my mind
Mhm.
is playing tricks on me.
And then you know what? Um, I'm a witness to that because you just said it. You can do all the things in church, and that's church. But when church is over, you got to sit with yourself. And what kind of conversations are you having with yourself? I just got done with a teaching at our church and for Bible class, and our theme for the year is faith over everything, joy in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And this it's been really good because you know sometimes you just got to really make yourself think about what you're thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we thinking about stuff that pulls us into that place, that pulls us into that rabbit, go down that rabbit hole. You got to monitor your thoughts because not
Mm-hmm.
only will your mind play tricks on you, your mind will trip you up and have you in a place that you're gonna need 4 days to get out of. I know, because I've been there. I've been there.
Well, I have been in the mental doing this mental health work for about 33 years, and I've been there.
Hmm.
Uh, and you have to believe in your own craft.
Yeah.
Um, what makes us exempt as healers and helpers? Nothing, because life be life. And I recall going back to childhood when you try to express a thought or a feeling and you can't. It's like go sit down somewhere. Ain't nothing wrong with you.
Ain't nothing wrong with you.
So it created a platform or the foundation for us to not communicate what we're feeling, not communicate our emotions. And then in church, because the church is made up of families. So we've
Hmm.
already brought our baggage into the church.
Yes.
See, the
Yes.
church don't create it.
It's
We
already
bring
there.
it to the church. And so oftentimes it's said the opposite, but we bring who we are to the church. And so we get busy, we get in ministry, and we do all of these things. But personally, I'm really suffering in silence, and I don't really know how to articulate it. I don't know really who to talk to about it. All I know is to come to church, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to give it to Jesus. And when I give it to Jesus verbally,
Hmm.
spiritually, emotionally, I pick it back up as soon as I leave out.
Well, I really never gave it to him.
Exactly.
I said it because through emotion, it made me feel good in the moment. But really, back when we was in church and we was younger, they said, if you're gonna pray about it, don't worry about it. And if you're gonna worry about it, don't pray about it. And the concept was, well, if you're gonna give it to God at the altar, leave it there. Don't take it back. And so many times we go through the emotional altar and we go through all of the emotions and we're still carrying the same baggage that we've always carried. Now, Chris, this is what's interesting too, because even in church today, some people are good at masking their mental illness,
Right.
especially in the church. Um, and I can say this because I'm a grace case.
We,
It's by grace, that I don't have a nervous condition
mm-hmm,
because my mother has a nervous condition.
mm-hmm.
My mother is a nervous wreck. She's a constant worrier. She just worries and gets all worked up. And I have to work extra hard not to worry. You see, when you've been in an environment where that's what you've seen, you start thinking that's what I'm supposed to be. But I'm glad I'm a grace case because if it wasn't for his grace, um, I could be on medication. Now, now, Chris, I've been depressed. And I remember sitting in a therapy session, and therapist says, I'm going to prescribe you. I think you're depressed right now. I said, I'm not depressed. I'm going to put you on some medication. I said, I feel better already. I didn't want to be on no medication.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm saying. If we need it, we need it.
We need it.
Talked to one of my members just last week. I said, girl, how you doing? She said, Pastor, I'm doing good. I'm taking my medication. I said, well, keep on taking it because it makes her, she said, I don't like the way it makes me feel. But you got to keep taking it so they can
And
get in
it's
your
going to have
system.
side effects. I mean, but we have to take our blood pressure medicine. We have to take
Yes, we do.
medication for
Hmm.
our diabetes. And so I just think the purpose, what I'm trying to talk about is that there's a culture in the church that needs to change
Sure.
as it relates to, I mean, we can call them mental strongholds if that sounds better, but
Hmm.
they exist because some of us have experienced some very traumatizing events in our lives. And during COVID, I call it was a global grief, it was community grief, it was bereavement overload. We had never experienced it. We had never seen so many people die at once. And all of that with us trying to figure out how to live, how to survive, and the residue of that. But we're also entered into that phase of everything that we were already struggling with.
Already
Anxiety already was existing,
shot too high.
depression was
Yeah.
already there. And so now here we have the world is completely changing. And the same crisis exists. And I thought it was important to talk about this in the Black church because what should we be doing about it? Now, of course, there's liability issues possibly.
Sure.
There is fear because if I start tapping into this, will it blow up and it's uncontrollable to whereas we can't manage? But what I envision, and I remember going to the Baptist council, sorry if I say it wrong, but they gave me 7 minutes to talk about this mental illness and ministry. Well, here's the thing. I believe that ministry connects to what looks like a mess. And if we're not developing ministry
That's
to
good.
change lives, to help cope, to help people transform, and I know
Hmm.
we do, but some things have to change at this point
Sure.
because people are not the same. Resilience have changed. People
Hmm.
don't have the same coping. You know, when you used to hear stories, my mama used to say, I walked to school 20 miles with
Yeah. Sure.
one shoe. You know,
Uh-huh. There is no
we
way. There's no way.
this culture does not have that type of sustainability, that type of resilience, that type of coping. You have drug addiction on the all-time highs, all kind of stuff out here, fentanyl in the marijuana. It's all other types of coping mechanisms. And
Sure.
in this generation, they want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when we have good church, I mean, I love church. I've been a member of the best church around Second Ebenezer since I was 25 years old. And so, but yet people are deteriorating
Absolutely. At an
and
alarming rate.
at alarming rates. And when you look at the Black church, when you look at our local pastors, I know you got to be overwhelmed. I know you have to scratch your head at night and say,
Sure.
God, what else can I do to help my
Um,
people?
I'm in a city, and one of the things I try to do when I talk to pastors is before I ask them anything, how is your mental? You know, how are you doing? I don't want to know how the church doing. I really don't, because the church is going to take care of itself. I want to know how you doing. And a lot of times, as pastors, we we put a lot on ourselves because we have a lot on us. Um, and you can get overwhelmed, you can get burdened. And I'm in a place where you got to know God for real, because what do you do when you want to produce, but you can't? And if I don't, me personally, I don't know about nobody else, if Bob Davis doesn't find ways to keep his mind going and positive doing things positive and doing things that makes me happy, then trying to do something to help other people can put me in a bad spot.
Definitely.
Because Chris, you got to understand too. Now, some things are circumstantial and situational, which means some things around you can get in you.
Right.
It don't have to be your fight. It don't have to be your thing. But because you're in that environment again, and you're in that situation, whatever the situation, it can get in you. And here you are saying, why am I feeling this ain't even my problem? But because again, like you said, we had things that we was dealing with or we didn't deal with before COVID. COVID came and now we still got a multitude of things that we really don't have no tools to deal with
No
at
tools
all.
and don't have the capacity, but we can get there. We can get there. And
Hmm.
and one of the things when you talk about secondary trauma, a lot of times as pastors, I'm not a pastor, but I've been working with people for years. The secondary effects of other people's story, afflictions, and mishaps, and hurts and pains. And so, if we never, as leaders, pastors, healers, identify your own
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
cope, you will clash. You will have
Sure.
a crash
Hmm.
and not understand what has happened. Secondary trauma is very real. And so I think we just have to keep having these conversations because I think May 10th, we had fresh oil. You know, First
Hmm.
Lady had
Yes.
fresh oil. They say, Chris, come help us in the altar. Now I'm going to serve. This is service. And what I discovered, I'm in tears. They were my tears. I'm feeling
The weight,
the weight of the
the
women
burdens. Hmm. Hmm.
who's hurting. And when you're called to heal, you're often more vulnerable than you realize.
Sure.
And so I'm feeling their pain. I was exhausted a week after that.
Sure you will.
And so how do you take care of yourself as pastor? How do you also begin to incorporate this conversation or these conversations in ministry or in teaching or in Bible class? Because one of the mishaps is that we're just not educated about it.
That's it. That's right.
We just need to become educated about what is mental illness,
Hmm.
what are signs, what are symptoms, what are coping mechanisms, what are treatment therapies, what spiritual development needs to happen. One of the things I learned to do years ago was I studied the Bible about the mind
Hmm.
because it is founded in scripture.
Sure it is.
But then can I recognize,
Sure.
because we have learned to live so uh when we've made abnormal normal, can I
Mm.
even recognize when my thinking is distorted? Can I even recognize that, you know what, my thinking, because in the recovery community they'll tell you your thinking got you here.
Mm. Mm. Isn't that something?
And they will say drugs is just a symptom of other things. And so a lot of times we'll look at the people who on drugs, or we'll look at the people who in prison, and we'll look at all of these other people and we'll say, well, it's something they did, or but what about the person who's just really not functioning day to day and pretending and masking and
Uh-huh.
hurting on the inside, but they're thinking? Can you look in the mirror and say, my thought when I look at my life, how has my thinking got me to this place? Not the things that happen to us naturally that we can't change.
No.
Grief, when we lose a loved one, when things happen that we do not cause. That's one aspect
Sure it
of
is.
life.
Mhm.
But then sometimes because of those things, or because of the things that has happened to us as a child, we begin to do things to ourselves that contributes to my mental illness.
Hmm. I heard you say something some time ago, and I've been rolling with it. You said you have to talk to your triggers. And here's what I said today at the church. I said, you got to talk to your triggers because your triggers will talk to you.
They sure will.
And they will tell you everything you want to believe about yourself, about other people, about the situation. And the situation is the situation, but you're thinking in the situation is what makes the situation worse than what it really is. And so one of our core values of our church, our 7 core values, is mindset. I'm constantly talking about mindset. The majority of my sermons, you're gonna hear something about the mind, because if we don't get our mind and our thoughts in alignment, everything, you're gonna have problems, you're gonna have challenges, you're gonna have issues, and that ain't the problem. The problem is, what is your response to the challenges, to the trauma, to the problems, to the things that come at you? And we know, listen, some days can come at you, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday can come at you all in one day. Now,
Right.
and you're trying to figure out, wait a minute, just listen, but what are you doing in the process so that you don't unravel at the seams? So
And
what,
some,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, and sometimes we're unraveling, and even with grief, when you lose a loved one, people are trying to hurry up and feel all right. Well, society pushes you on, like you got to go back to work in three
Yes.
days. You got to keep, and so how do you learn how to sit in what you in and not allow it to help you deteriorate? How do you sit in it, process it, and still cope effectively?
Hmm.
How do you react to life when you're in pain? Now, when I went to therapist, my therapist tricked me
Okay.
because, of course, my ego say I need Bishop Jakes or somebody, and
Yeah.
I was frustrated. I was highly frustrated. I sat myself down at church. I don't need nobody to sit me down. I know when I'm crazy, because I ask God as I do this work, please don't let me pretend to
Hmm.
help in areas where I'm sick in. Don't let me
Sure.
do it. So he
Sure.
said, Chris, sit down for you cuss people out, because that's what's gonna happen.
You know
And so
yourself.
my therapist said, sis, because we were friends.
Hmm.
You say, let me walk this out. Now I didn't know what the this was, but I was so tired. I said, okay.
Hmm.
And what I discovered is, first of all of the people I had lost in my life, I probably really had never really even talked about it, because I'm always in a position to
Of
give,
helping.
to
Of
help,
helping. Hmm.
but here's the part that transitioned me. Well, Chris, what lies have you told yourself about your own pain? And I said to her, I don't get to have no pain, because who cares
Who cares?
if I have pain?
Sure. Sure.
They only care about if I can be available for their pain.
Of course.
She said, that's the enemy.
Mm. That's powerful.
But in that process, and I'm being very transparent, I had to go back to childhood. Forgive your mama for making you grown at 6. Now, in my mind, ain't nothing wrong with that. I know how to
Sure.
cook. I'm
Sure. Sure.
surviving,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
forgive her,
Yeah.
because what it did was put you in hypervigilance. So you
Mm.
constantly going, you constantly conquering, you
Yeah.
constantly, because can't nothing go wrong. But
Hmm.
then forgive your daddy,
Mm.
because he didn't always walk before you as he should have. Now I
Mm.
didn't know I needed to do that.
You
I'm
didn't
I'm
know.
thinking I need to be healed from divorce, but it's childhood, and if it showed up through the divorce,
Well, look at that. Look at that. Check that
so it
out.
had to happen.
It had to happen. Look. So who tolls the tow truck?
Who told the tow truck?
And there comes times when every tow truck needs to be told. Here's the thing with that grief component, it's okay not to be okay.
It's okay.
We're so busy trying to, and notice, I don't know where it came from. You take the days off while you're planning for the funeral, and everybody plans for the funeral. Nobody plans for the day after the funeral.
Nobody.
But the people who are there to support you, they got to go back to work. They going back
They,
to their life. So the calls gonna stop. You got calls up until the day of the service and the repast, and that's it. because people go back to life. And now you thinking about, well, I only got 2 days off. I got to go back to work. You're not ready to go back to work
You're not ready.
because you're falling apart on the job. You can't keep yourself together. And what's wrong with saying it's me over this job? Because if I don't get me together, I'm gonna lose the job anyway
I'm
because
going
it's
to
gonna
lose
be a
it.
homicide or a suicide. Because grief happens in stages. Sometimes it takes. I was My grandmother passed last year, and of course, went through that process with it. But I didn't know until this year when we were purchasing her marker, her bench, and I saw the print up. I couldn't even take it. I had to get off the phone and I needed a minute because it just came out of nowhere. But I let myself have it
You let
because
yourself
I
have it.
needed it, Chris. I needed that time for me to say, I didn't get it all out because I miss her. And that's okay. I love her. I don't want her to suffer. But Chris, I'm gonna tell you something. At the same time, the day before, I had to put my dog down. Well, I didn't think that was gonna bother me until I had to take him to get him put down. I cried like a baby. I had to come and get back into bed because it was a part of my family. What I'm saying, grief grabs you.
It does. It
And
puts you in a chokehold.
I was just going to say it'll choke the life out of you if you're not careful. And because we don't have the tools to grieve, we become basket cases over time. And now you're lashing out on people and they just trying to be there for you.
Yeah, they become victims.
They become victims.
You
They
be
become
you
victims.
victimize people when you do not process your emotions and feelings and thoughts and understand its origin.
Mm.
Because see,
That's
a
what we
lot of
don't do though.
that we
We
don't
don't.
understand its origin. Like, surely because I stepped on your toe didn't cause you to cuss me out like that.
Not like that.
So what is the origin? And
Yeah.
and I know, my pastor, Bishop Van preached today, look to the hills,
Huh.
and so my mind, I try to, hear the word and apply it to my life. And I envision looking to the hills once before because I was on my back.
Mm, It meant something different.
Listen, on my back and can't get up. So all I could do was look up. And so in those times, even in church, even being oily, as they say,
Hmm.
faith filled, Holy Ghost filled,
All
there
that.
are times when you are on your back.
And you better know you're on your back.
And you better know it. But here's the part, because our generations are changing and the conversations are being had, and people are more open to talk about therapy. Um, in our churches, this is what I envision. I'm just going to put it out here.
Okay.
I envision it being uh, leaders getting trained in crisis intervention, um, being aware of certain signs and symptoms. Um, I envision uh, ministry available on Sundays.
Hmm.
When crisis abrupt, there's a process. Um, Counseling resources for low income families because they about to, they're trying to get rid of Medicaid. So what
Sure.
are we going to do?
What we
And
gonna do?
so we have to be creative, I believe, in getting the information out, because we as a people, we don't like processes. We don't like red tape. If it don't happen immediately, we're not doing it, but yet suffering.
There are some things you cannot shout out. There are some things you can't dance out. There's some things you can't speak in tongues out. Some things you just got to obey your way out and then you got to grow out. And the way you grow out of it is you got to do the work. You got to do the work. Um, Zora Neale Hurston says, if you're silent about your pain, your enemies will kill you and say you enjoyed it.
Ooh.
The type of pain that we have, our stories are wrapped up in that pain. And if we don't share them, conversations like this is so necessary, because once you start hearing somebody else talk, you will begin to thank God, I'm just not crazy as I thought I
I
was.
thought it ain't just me.
I know I got some stuff going on in my life, but I ain't that crazy because somebody else. Now here's the challenge, and I love, and I wanna see what you want to see. I want to believe God with you for that, and I know your heart, and that's what you really about. Um, and here's what it's gonna take. It shouldn't take a crisis for us to have crisis prevention. It's too late then.
It's way too late.
Think about it. On your job, they have drills in the event. If you thank God, if you go to a hospital, they have drills in an event. The church is often the last place where we drilling about anything. And if we don't come together and start identifying and talking about our struggles. See, here's what I said this morning. I don't care if you don't like me. He loves me. So what I know about me is what you think about me. It don't matter. The problem that I'm having is I want to see people help, but it's only so much I can do
It's only so much. It, it,
until
it,
they open up their mind and say, yeah, I need some help. There's nothing I can do.
and I think that right there, what is our capacity in the church? What do we have available to just begin to develop these processes, because it's vital. You hear about workplace violence. Now it's violence in the church. I know we got security. I know we got things in place like that. But it also, I mean, what if somebody just completely mentally ill just decides, or don't decide, but they have a crisis, or they go into psychosis, or, they're manic, and
Um,
so what happens with Black men, they take them to jail.
sure, sure. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking that we may also need to train security. There's a lot of things that we need to put in place, because people believe in church.
Hmm.
Don't send me to no social service
Right.
agency. We don't trust them. We don't want them in our business. That's the
Uh-huh.
first thing we say.
Hmm.
Don't send me to call nobody who I don't
Yeah.
know, who's
I
gonna
don't know
start
them
asking me
because I ain't
questions,
gonna talk to them.
because I ain't gonna talk to
Yeah.
them. First of all, I ain't gonna tell them the truth.
Right. Yeah.
And let me pause there. If you can't be honest, you can't be helped.
You come on, Chris. Now wait. Let's not rush past that.
If you
Let's not
can't be
rush past
honest,
that.
you
If you
cannot be
can't
helped.
be honest, you can't be helped. I saw this somewhere. I don't know where I saw that. You could have been healed, but you kept pretending that you weren't hurt.
You kept pretending. We have been taught to pretend.
Well, now that you mentioned it, and we go back to the topic of this, we're talking about church. We have pretended so long that it's now you can't hardly pretend no more. The Rue Boys had a song, it's written all over your face. You don't have to say a word. The problem is, here we go. We got, how you doing? I'm fine. Tell your face.
Tell
Mama
your
said,
face.
fix your face. How do I fix my face? I'm really struggling internally. And you're not giving me a platform or an opportunity to express myself. When the little boy fell and bust his knee, what did some man say? Get up. You ain't no punk. Don't cry.
You better not cry.
So here is a little boy who grows up as a grown man with little boy issues because he was told to harbor or to handcuff his emotions. When you're hurting, you're supposed to cry,
You're supposed to cry.
but you can't. What did you say again? I should have been writing. I'm sorry. You
If you
can't,
cannot be honest,
you can't get help.
you can't be helped. You might can get some help, but you can't be helped if you're not honest. See, if I come to help you and you lying, or you're embarrassed, or you're allowing shame to
Mhm.
interrupt your healing, then I can't help you.
You know,
You see,
when I,
here's the thing. I'm sorry. We have to own our story.
yeah,
Rather, I inflicted it myself
sure,
or somebody victimized me. It's my story, and you can't hurt me with my story.
you
So I
can't.
might as well be honest.
Hmm. And so, when you talk to certain people, and I know you've had this experience, I have a rule. I'm not going to waste your time, and I'm not going to let you waste my time. Let's cut through all of this. Let's get to the real issue. What happened? What did you say? What did you do? The origin, as you talked about. What happens when you need the church? Because mental illness in the church, and listen to what I'm about to say, we haven't dealt with it, but it's been there the whole time.
The whole time.
And I'm thankful that today, more and more churches and pastors are talking about it because that's going to help us in the long run. But it's always been here.
It always, wherever there's people, there's problems.
There's, you remember when Jesus dealt with the man who was in the tombs and he's cutting himself and he's naked and Chris, nobody had a problem with him when he was doing all that craziness. But once Jesus came into his space, into that place where he was, and changed his mind, he was clothed and sitting in his right mind. Because you got to be out of your mind. The Bible never says he was crazy. But come on now. Come on now. You living in the cemetery, we know you
Something
crazy.
wrong with you. Well,
Something is wrong with you.
and
Now, once he got himself back and he got healed, the Bible says the people was afraid of him. They wasn't afraid of him when he was crazy and living in the cemetery, cutting himself and screaming and running around naked. They only was afraid of him when his mind got right. When your mind get right, people can't handle you.
exactly.
As long as you out of your mind, they at least, girl, that's just Vicky with her crazy. Go on, Vicky, with your crazy self. Don't come over here with that. And
Right.
some of us, we're gonna be together with our families, and all of us got a Vicky in our family, or Uncle Rue or Uncle
Several.
Buck, who
Several.
gon' who gonna come with that craziness and gone. You took your medicine today? Because I ain't in the mood. But really, when you get your mind right, you become a threat. You're
And especially
dangerous.
to those who have become content with your crazy. And so I'm thinking about the man at the pool of Bethesda
Okay,
for 38
let's
years.
talk about
And
him.
all of the people that probably walked past him and didn't say nothing to him, because for one, where's the compassion?
Sure.
When we look at ourselves and where's our compassion? And so he sat there, Jesus come, and he asked a question. At least if you see me on that pew, year after year after year after after
Yeah.
Sunday, and I look like,
Hmm.
can you at least ask me?
Yeah.
And Jesus just said, what? Get up and do what? Take up your bed and walk.
Take up your bed and walk.
Because some things, in my interpretation, I ain't no theologian, it's just some things we're going to have to learn to walk with.
Chris, my concern with that man at that pool is if you've been there 38 years, you waiting on somebody. By that time, you could have rolled in the water
You
yourself.
could have, but
You could have was
his
stuck,
mind
was stuck on,
was a stronghold.
I need somebody to help me.
I need somebody to help me. And here's another piece. It don't say this in the word. Am I even worth it?
Mm.
Do I even believe that I'm valuable enough to heal?
Well, Chris, let's just pull that into 2025. There's so many people who could be healed today, could get a miracle today. I think about the blind man. I preached about him today in John chapter 9. When Jesus heals him, Chris, it was a messy miracle because he spat on the ground and made mud and eye salve and put it on his eyes. Now, he was born blind. He could have said, "Oh, I ain't doing that. That's nasty. That's disgusting." Hey, Jesus, that is disgusting. But sometimes when you need a miracle, it's got to get messy.
It
As a
is
matter of
messy.
fact, you can't even get a miracle unless it's messy. But Chris, what if he would have talked like everybody else around him was talking? Am I worth it? Because see, nobody wanted to help him. Nobody wanted to, while he was begging and blind, they was cool with him. But as soon as his eyes opened, that's when everybody wanted to question him and wanted to discover, well, who are you now? But what if he would have had the wrong mindset to say, because of my circumstance, am I worth this? And somebody that's watching today may be thinking the very same thing. Am I worth it? And the answer is absolutely. You got to
Absolutely.
stop thinking like you are not and start thinking like, yes, I am.
And I think also, I think that's so important because again, I'm referencing what Bishop preached, but he talked about, I look to the hills from which cometh my help. And the question was, who helps me? And so it was him talking to himself in Psalms 121. And it's the self-talk, it's the self-sabotage.
Hmm.
And even with the man at the pool of Bethesda, once he got up and began to walk, Jesus said to him again, now don't you go back.
Don't go back.
Don't go back. And so a lot of times when you talk about doing the work, when you talk about what things can we do in church, a lot of times we have to have things in place to sustain it. Doing the work is, of course, the initial focus,
Hmm.
but how do I sustain it? And how do we align our ministries? I mean, of course, we can't do everything in His church. We got to be responsible for our own healing. That's what Ayanna Van says, say, I'm not going to fight you for your healing.
Yeah,
So
right.
first, I got to decide that by any means necessary, I am healed.
I'm here.
But for the sake of this conversation, and it's a quick conversation, I know we're going to have to do it again because we ain't got about 6 minutes.
Hmm.
When you look at our churches and you look at hurting families, hurting people, grieving people, depressed people, people who have mental and emotional strongholds, what types of conversation, besides preaching it, besides, we have grief and loss support like quarterly, for people to come in. Other churches, some churches have put counseling practices in their church,
Hmm.
to help people get access. I think if we just keep having the conversations and as pastors really take a look at it, as ministry leaders begin to look at, I think initially we have to become equipped first, um, and just look at what more can we do in the Black church to be ready or to be able to provide these resources and follow up. It's
Hmm.
almost like the church becoming, like in the olden days, the social service agency for our community.
Hmm. Well, we're at that place. We've been there.
Yeah.
I think that we have to be honest again. The church has to be honest. Have we properly given people the tools they need? Most people don't even know the Bible, but they know church
Mm-hmm.
and they know church language and they know all the church things we do, but they don't really know how to use their tools. When we look at and I'm gonna be done with this, and I'll just flow with you wherever you want to go. But David had to fight through some things before he wrote "The Lord is my shepherd."
Mm.
He had to go through some things before he wrote that. And when he wrote it, he didn't write it on a sunshiny day. He wrote it in the midst of something he was fighting through. And when you fight through, that's the key I'm trying to get through us tonight. When you fight through, you'll be able to tell somebody, that's because I know the Lord is my shepherd. But until then, I got to go back to what you said. Until you're honest about the things you're dealing with internally, and I get it, you can't tell everybody. You bet not tell everybody, but you better find somebody. I used to say, find a stranger. And can I unload on you? I just got to
Right.
get it out of me. Because a lot of times, Chris, here's what we got to understand too, and it may be somebody that's listening. You've been here. The reason why you got to get it out of you is because you implode before you explode. It starts, you start falling to pieces inside before you start bleeding on other people. And I just refuse to bleed on people. I just won't do it. I won't do it. What you got?
Hey, I think what you said is it. I think we want the listeners to know that we know that God is the author and the finisher, and
Yes,
we
he
know
is.
His word is true. His word and will walk you through any tragedy, any traumatizing experience.
Hmm.
But there are times where what life has brought to you creates such an emotional and mental stronghold to you're not coping, you're not functioning at the level, you're not walking in your purpose, you're angry, you're depressed, you're upset. Help is available, and we are promoting church and therapy and
Absolutely.
counseling.
Absolutely.
Our pastors are overwhelmed. I know they are. They're people, and they need self care as well. So I just think we have to continue to work together. Don't be afraid to share your story. Don't
Hmm.
be afraid to share your pain because there's purpose connected to your pain.
Hmm.
But you'll never get to it if you don't process that pain. It'll never happen. And so I am
Purpose
just, hey, listen,
connected to your pain,
that's the
which
next one.
means you don't get to your purpose until
Without pain,
after your pain. After your pain, that's when purpose shows up.
that's when purpose shows up.
That is so powerful. That is
That's when purpose.
powerful. I
Nothing,
want to
nothing
say this.
happens without it.
Nothing happens. I want to say, and I want to challenge us um, tonight as believers, and maybe there's somebody who's listening who's not a believer, but I want to challenge us to not just cope with life. We got to conquer life.
We got to conquer it.
Jesus didn't die on the cross to teach us how to die. He died on the cross to teach us how to live. And so Paul says we're not just conquerors, we're more than conquerors. So in this life, we got to learn how to do more than cope with life. We got to conquer life because when we conquer life, we'll experience life that we've never had before. And then we can embrace the pain so we can get to the purpose. I can't wait to talk about that one. This
Listen,
has been great.
yes, it
This
has.
has
And I'm
been great.
so grateful that you took the time out. This will not be the last conversation because I think this is the season. And I know you and I have been talking about this for a few years.
Before podcast was popular, we was talking about this. That's why
Exactly.
I'm excited
Exactly.
to do it, and I'm thankful to God that I'm able to do it today. It's been a long day today.
Yes, it has.
I've been up since 5 a.m. at the church by 6 a.m. I preached, I baptized today. I came home, had to go do honeydew list. We barbecued today. I done ate and been with the family. I ain't had a nap yet, but I had to do this because it's you. Now, if it had been anybody else,
Amen.
I was supposed to be at a service today. I said, not today, not today. But I was glad to be here with you today. And I want to say to everybody who's watching or who may watch this later, whenever you see Dr. C talking about anything, I don't care if it's how to fry wings on a Thursday, you need to tune in because
God
it's
bless
going to
you.
bless your life. Whenever
God,
you hear I finally choose me, tune in
amen.
tag somebody, share this with somebody, and tell them I'm getting what I need because I'm gonna be honest about the help that I gotta get. That's
Amen.
good. My
Well,
shameless plug for you.
and I appreciate it. And the last thing is this, because finally I choose me came from a place after the pain. And with that, I would like to just say thank you all for listening, being a part. Stay tuned. We will continue this conversation because I believe God has something for the churches, for our community that only He can do, but we have to agree with God for it to happen. And so, Pastor Davis, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome,
coming
friend.
on and sharing your heart, sharing your truth, sharing your journey with us. And until next time, everyone have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.